Today we're going to compare XRP and XLM to the S&P 500. Let's forget looking at it through the crypto eye. Let's just compare it to a completely different market altogether. And if you're wondering what the hell this is, well, this was a protein bottle that you could see still has protein powder in it. See, oh my God, there's protein powder. This was a cooking spray bottle. As you can see, there are like teeth marks and stuff like that in there. My puppy got this. And this was like 2/3 full. So my guy is definitely in bulking mode. Let's take a look at comparing XRP and XLM to the S&P 500. And if you're like, bro, who cares about the S&P 500? Well, you're fine. Fucking leave. Don't watch the rest of this. But those of you that want to compare crypto to a big thing like the S&P 500, good broad stroke. S&P 500 is very safe. Very easy compared, like less risk. Let's compare it. But first, your comments. Say, Tom, a dog to the Lumens says, Klaus, both sides are corrupt. I don't give either a red cent. Fuck them both. Very well said, sir. I can't read that one. Lester said, I think what's confusing is the situation is that other coins besides XRP are pretty quick. If XRP still met an urgent need and that was the only option at this point, we'd see the volume. The adoption isn't happening and people aren't building on it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. No builders, no interest, no builders. Well, let's start it off with XLM and then we're gonna get into XRP versus the S&P 500. All right, so the S&P 500 is in red on the screen with XLM in green. Over the last 3 months, the S&P 500 is up 9.1%. While XLM right now is currently down at 1.5%. Let's zoom out a little bit more to the 6 month and you could see that we've got XLM down 10%, the S&P 500 up 9%. Zoom it out to the year and for 1 year, you got the S&P 500 at 21% to the positive and XLM up 18%. All right. Let's take a look at the 2 year. And I got to ask you a big question before we get into 2 year. Think of the riskiness of crypto, right? Think of all the crap. Think of all the volatility. Think of all the daily BS in that. And think of how boring the S&P 500 is and how low risk there is. So you're telling me for low risk, for 1 year, you could have earned more money than high, crazy, risky XLM? Yes, that's the truth. You don't like it? Well, then you don't like stats. Trick like stats. Let's look at the 2 year. S&P 500, and don't worry, XRP fans, we're going to get to that. I haven't looked at the XRP one yet. I did XLM before I did this. And I was like, oh, cool, let's take a look at both because we cover both quite heavily on the channel. And I like comparing stuff, and I like stats, and I like visuals, and I don't like, though, when my dog eats the protein. Like, dude, for real? There was like at least 20 servings left in here, man. Like, whatever. All right, so in the red, S&P 500 up 13% over the last 2 years. XLM down 38%. Zoom out just a little bit more. So we're covering the bull run, right? So if you hodled through that, guess what? You are now looking at the S&P 500 up 53%, XLM up 12%. So hodlers, you have not been rewarded. Let's go to the 5 year. This is freaking crazy. If you go to the 5 year, and a lot of you out there are thinking, dude, XLM's got to easily blow it out the water. Well, here's the problem. The S&P 500, as you can see in the red line, just keeps chugging on up. And there's like so little risk in that index. Check it out. Over the 5 year, the S&P 500 is up 77%, while XLM is only up 33% for the 5 year. So have you been rewarded for hodling? Are we talking about melting faces? Are we still melting those faces? Are grown men going to cry? Let's look at XRP. All right. And I lied earlier. I looked at XRP too. Come on now. You think I wouldn't look at it before doing this? But let's do this. Let's get rid of the candle and let's make that a line for XRP. So XRP in the green and the S&P 500 in blue. Okay, so for the last month, you've got XRP up in the green. I like that. You got the S&P 500 down to XRP. Okay, so a little different story. S&P 500, remember, is in blue. Remember, they don't trade on the weekend, so that's why you see gaps here where crypto trades 24/7. See, that's why I like crypto, though, is because, like, news happens 24/7, so we could trade it. S&P 500 compared to XRP up 9% last 3 months. That is the S&P, while XRP is down 6.9%. Let's go to the 6 month. All right, you see the Taurus pump up there in the middle screen. 6 month, you got the S&P up 12%, while XRP is up 3%. Okay. And again, I want people just to have in the back of their minds, think of the risk associated with XRP. Think of all the market FUD. Think of David Schwartz's dumbass saying stupid things. There's a lot of risk and there's just a lot of drama. And that drama earns you 3% in 6 months, where like no drama in the S&P is worth 12%. And look, I'm not telling you to put your money in this. This is the furthest from it. I'm just comparing it so that we could start seeing what risky versus safe looks like and if the reward is there. I think people now are hopefully starting to see that this is why people are upset, because they're in a high risk item that is getting destroyed by the S&P 500, which is crazy low risk. Let's go to the 1 year, see if it still looks, okay. Check it out. Now in the 1 year, XRP is a winner, up 37%, S&P 500 up 25%. Okay, a little different than the XLM story, right? When we went to the XLM story for 1 year, they were fairly the same. The S&P 500 had about a 3% lead. But here, XRP has a 12% lead, 12.5%. Let's go to the 2 year. All right, here's the 2 year. Now check it out. For the 2 year action, you got XRP down 25%, S&P 500 up 13%. Have you noticed the trend that as I'm doing this S&P 500 thing, it's always up? Have you figured that out yet? Have you seen that trend? Zoom out just a little bit more. Okay, now this is interesting. This is where the XRP hodlers are getting rewarded. And they're getting rewarded if they've been in for the long term on that initial investment. Look at this. When we zoom out a little bit and we cover 2020, okay, right before all the crazy bull run, I'm talking like you OG XRP holders out there. You are up. You are up 171%, while the S&P 500 is only up 56%. 56% is nothing to sneeze about. Now, let's go to the 5 year. Let's zoom out real far, just like we did with XLM, okay? And remember, S&P 500 trounced XLM, more than doubled it. Look at this. XRP and the S&P 500 over the last 5 years are nearly identical, with the S&P 500 having just a slight lead of like 4.5%. So for 5 years of risky RXP hodl mode versus totally like I mean, like, come on, let's be real here. You know, S&P 500, that is not risky. Come on now. Like, let's be real here. Green. That's why it's the S&P 500, my guy. So when you look at this, you're like, dude, risk versus reward, risky versus safe. Yeah, risky versus safe, volatile versus not. Wonder what this was like when like he bit into it, because you know these things are like pressurized. Like his face had to have been just like doused with cooking oil and like bulking for my dogs. Come on, man. Oh, doggies. But yeah, I just thought this was a pretty interesting way of looking at it and comparing it to something that is safer. Safe versus safer. That's a good way to put it. I mean, think about that. Look at all the risk associated with crypto. There's just tons of it. With all that risk, what do you want? You want high upside, right? I am talking like Granddaddy Perp, rockin' high upside. But if you've got all that risk and the upside is on average, like on almost every screen, except there was, I think, 1 or 2 for XRP that actually were in favor for XRP. You had the S&P 500 worth more than XRP, more than XLM. And this is not risky at all, and this is crazy risky. So you've got people putting crazy risky money to get low yield, not crazy risky money for better yield. So now when we zoom out a little bit and we start looking at this through a macroeconomic lens, now we see why during the low, cost of money times, right, when money is cheap, people play the risky assets. When money is not cheap, people play the safe assets, because you would rather have your money be safe somewhere and keep earning than taking crazy amounts of risk to get less reward than what was safe. Like, I'm not telling people what to do. That's the furthest from what this video is. But what I'm showing people is the why behind what is happening. the screens of data behind it, so that every time you get people telling you, oh, melting faces, oh, grown men will cry, oh, we're going to the moon, there's that other side of the story, like the real side, like the side that's actually happening right now, not the, oh, let's try to predict the future that's not looking so high. Like, the reality side is telling you that people are taking a ton of risk and getting shit reward, and they're pissed. And when they're pissed, they're not going to put more money into it. They're going to put their money into other things that move it. I just showed you the S&P 500. I think you'd be pretty happy to be up by that amount compared to being a long-term hodler of what I just showed you on the screen. What about like ICP? What about Render? What about Near? What about all these other ones that have just blown up since about middle of October? I bet you that would look very different compared to the S&P 500. Take a look. You'll see what I'm talking about. But for real, if people are still telling you melting faces and all that kind of stuff, I don't know. Maybe they don't know how to use the chart. Maybe they got to take the chart and flip it upside down, or maybe they just need to like have more like protein. Like I don't know, man. I know I'm going to catch some fire for this because people are like, oh, bro, you can't, it's not fair to compare to the S&P 500. What would you like me to compare it to? Something else that's just not performing well? I mean, like, do you want to compare yourself to the worst, or do you want to compare yourself to the best? I picked the best, which was Bitcoin. And there were some Nancys out there, some snowflakes that were like, yo, bro, you can't compare it to Bitcoin. That's not fair. When I go racing, I compare myself to the best. I don't want to be middle of the pack. Do you? Do you want to? So I picked something middle of the pack, S&P 500. Something that's not risky, something that's crazy boring, something that's not volatile. And you saw how that turned out. So what would you have me do next? Would you have me compare them to the bottom of the basement? Because is that how you compare yourself? Is that how you compare your kids? Is that how you are compared to your job? Well, how are you performing to the worst we have in this company? Well, I'm a 10% better performer than last place. And they're like, oh, Jesus Christ, you still can suck. You know, my kid, he's near the bottom, but he's not at the bottom. But man, tell you, he's 5% better than last place. Meanwhile, last place is still trying to figure out how to tie their shoe in 4th grade. You do want to compare yourself to the best because you want to be the best. Some people didn't like that. So I said, let's compare ourselves to average, and you just saw the results. Maybe my next video, I'm going to compare it to like, I don't know, like gambling in Thailand, in an underground casino, and what your odds are of winning. I'll compare it to that. Catch you later.